So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Cape Town in South Africa. So the last video I edited together before departing on this trip starts off with me moaning about having picked a flight with a 6 AM departure and, well, don't you know it, I've done it again. It's currently about 3:45 and I've got to leave here shortly, head to Cape Town Airport for 2 flights today. The first is a domestic hop on South African Airways up to Johannesburg. The second is a connection from there across to Mauritius, which will be country number 101 for me. And I'm going to cover both flights in this video. I don't think the first flight's going to be that exciting. It's an economy leg. I'm not sure there even is a business cabin on that flight, and with any luck I'll spend a chunk of it asleep. Then I've got about 90 minutes on the ground in Johannesburg before continuing on for the 4-hour flight in business class across to Mauritius. I had a good experience on South African Airways getting across to Windhoek last week, so let's see if they can repeat it and offer a similarly good experience this time. So time to check out, time to find an Uber, time to get to the airport, and if you'd like to see how all of this ends up going, stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me. It's very easy to get an Uber in Cape Town before 4 AM. It took about 15 seconds for a car to arrive. Traffic was extremely light too, so after just 18 minutes and for the princely sum of £8.50, I was deposited at Cape Town's airport. I could have had another 20 minutes in bed. Inside, and there were a few people milling around, but despite it being 100 minutes until my departure time, no South African check-in desks were yet open. I checked in online, so although I much prefer to travel with a physical boarding pass, particularly when connecting, I decided to head on through security rather than idly standing around. My flight on Swiss down to South Africa had credited to my Aegean account, so my renewed gold status was showing on the booking, even though this leg was to be in economy class. But it was another occasion where having priority made no real difference, as it was all so quiet that early in the morning. I headed straight to the lounge, another benefit of having had my status upgraded, and despite the lights being on and the door being open, the lounge wouldn't accept guests for another 3 minutes, so I was asked to go and stand outside. Not ideal, but I can only assume their insurance coverage only kicks in at bang on 4:30 when they opened, so it was an unacceptable risk to have me sitting or even standing on the premises until then. 11 minutes later, so at precisely 4:38 AM, we were allowed in. I was too tired to be annoyed, and I'd been recognised by one of the pilots who was popping into the lounge to get a coffee before taking command, so the time passed quite pleasantly in conversation with him. But it was worth the wait, as the lounge was really nice. It's large, they don't need to cram the seating in to accommodate people, as you can see. In my last video about South Africa, I talked a little about the carrier's history, and like I'd found in Johannesburg, these lounges were probably designed for a time with many more South African Airlines departures. Some of the seating was really nice and came with a really nice view. There was a good hot breakfast buffet, plus an equally good array of cold options. I didn't spot any drinks on self-pour, but there was a manned bar with what looked like a good range of options. It was slightly annoying to have to get a simple orange juice or coffee that way, but other than that, the lounge was hard to fault. The airport was coming to life as I headed to the gate. It was still dark, but some of the shops were opening up. I scoped out where the departure gate was and spotted staff there with no queue, and they were very kindly able to print physical boarding passes for me. And a few minutes later, boarding began just as dawn started to break. Not a time of day I'm commonly awake for, I have to confess. Down the jet bridge to our chariot, an 8-year-old Airbus A320 that started life with Jetstar Pacific before joining South African 8 months earlier. The typical 3-3 layout throughout, and from seeing the seats, I'm quietly confident that no business class was offered on this flight. Seat 4A for me, so if there was a business section, it was a small one. Below average legroom, although I got lucky with an empty seat next to me, so at least I got the Euro business experience. A tray table, literature, a window. This is why I don't usually make videos about economy class experiences. They can be a bit dull. We were all settled in time for an on-time pushback, and it was bye-bye Cape Town. I made a video about what I found there and I really enjoyed it. I'll be back. The sunrise was beautiful, but it did rather overpower my takeoff footage. I have very little memory of this flight, which suggests I slept through a lot of it, but I did get some footage of the breakfast box we were served. I was the only person in the rows I could see to take up the offer of one of these, which did not bode well for the quality of the content, but it was okay. Those around me looked like regular travellers who have an established breakfast routine built around a flight like this, which doesn't involve a cardboard box. Followed up by a drinks round where the orange juice I asked for came in a can. The clouds built as we headed northeast, and after 100 minutes in the air we descended into an overcast and gloomy Johannesburg, my second time visiting and the second time the weather was borderline grim. We pulled up to a gate in the international section of the airport, so after deplaning as normal we were directed straight back out of the terminal, down some stairs to a bus for transfer to the domestic side. It's always a little annoying when the airline decides it's cheaper to move all the passengers after landing than it is to move the plane. The inconvenience this creates for those passengers carries no value in their calculations. So some of the advantage we gained from landing 20 minutes early was given back with a 10-minute bus ride, but I still had plenty of time to make my international connection. I was on alert for transfer signage, but the options were check-in, bag claim or exit. I followed check-in as that sounded the best, and it's only when editing this video that I realised that this was the door between airside and landside, guarded by this employee tasked with ensuring passenger flow is one way only, without doubt the most boring job in any airport. But that deposited me back at the check-in area. To this day I don't know if there is a route that keeps you airside. I suspect not. It was all a bit confusing, but I realised that I must have teleported landside, as there's never going to be a Nando's solely available to arriving domestic passengers. So I tried to work out where I was so I could get myself back airside for my next flight. This involved walking pretty much the entire length of the building, past that central atrium to the international departure zone. Again, no indication of a fast track option, again no real queue, but again it seemed to take forever to process people, and my video timestamps tell me it took 9 minutes to clear security and leave the country. If these agains make no sense to you, I'd departed Johannesburg on an international flight to Namibia a few days earlier, an experience you'll find here. And again, the lengthy walk through the departure lounge to the South African lounge, which again was quiet. I had my Star Alliance Gold in hand this time, but still wasn't invited to head into the Platinum section of the lounge. I can only conclude that this is reserved solely for South Africans' high status holders, which would be unusual. If you know what you need to get access, let me know in the comments. That was the plane we'd arrived into Johannesburg on, and it had taken about 35 minutes to cover the 250 metres between the plane and the lounge. That's not a complaint, just an observation about the quirks of how airports work. And again, the lounge was really good, with a wide range of good quality stuff. I spent about a half hour there before heading to the gate, which was at the far end of the international wing of the airport, so it was another decent walk away. And whilst the plane was there, the crew wasn't. No explanation was provided as to what had happened to them. So we sat there for about a half hour before the crew showed up, after which boarding swiftly began. And down to our second chariot, another A320, but this time an 11-year-old one, and one that had been with South Africans since delivery. And unlike the last one, this one was equipped with 6 rows of a business cabin set out in a 2-2 configuration with armchair style seating. Seat 2K for me that day. Decent but not abundant legroom, not a huge amount of footroom either because of those boxes. but comfortable enough for a flight blocked to take 4 hours. No screen, but a device holder here, some literature, and perhaps oddly headphones, even though there was no screen. And again I lucked out by having no one sitting next to me. Brown seating again, not a colour I'd pick for an airplane interior. There were overhead lights and air vents, but it was an 11-year-old plane with an 11-year-old seat, so there were some signs of wear and tear. 11 years ago they'd installed power, even if USB charging wasn't common back then. Another sign of some maintenance challenges down here too, and some more here. It's not a good look really. A pre-departure champagne was offered and accepted, something that doesn't often happen on narrow-body planes. Cheers! Its delivery was swiftly followed by a small bowl of biltong. That's meat that has been dried and cured. That's an extremely South African thing to offer. It's essentially jerky, but I'm sure biltong purists will be able to explain what makes the South African version so special in the comments section. It was a really nice detail for this to be offered, a simple and inexpensive way of localising the service offered, so well done South African. Make sure you have your teeth in when you eat it, and don't plan any important telephone calls for the first few minutes after you start chewing. It was delicious though. We push back about 45 minutes behind schedule. Lufthansa operates the Queen of the Skies to Johannesburg, I noticed. Bye bye South Africa. At least the weather had perked up a bit since we arrived. And up! I'd not lingered in Johannesburg. It doesn't have a great reputation as a tourist destination, and time is always limited on these trips, so I'd opted to spend my time in Windhoek and Cape Town instead. But the city looked pleasant enough from the air, and there are some sights to see, so perhaps I'll linger next time. Let me know in the comments whether I should. When we levelled off, the reason for the headphones became clear. It is a long time since I've been on a plane with movies shown centrally on cabin screens like this. A hot towel then appeared. There's the audio control panel. And a menu was also delivered. Pause the video to take a closer look. It was quite an impressive menu actually, that promised great things. Service started with a tablecloth and a drinks round. I went for a blind tiger gin and tonic, accompanied by some rather delicious and Moorish canapes. Cheers! It was still quite early, but I'd been up for quite some time by this point, and very nice it was too. Next was the blackened spicy roasted chicken breast, nicely presented and also delicious. No wine list was offered, and I can't now recall specifically what I had, but it was South African, it was red, and it was very nice. Then, as the airline seemed to be keen on promoting South African fare, I went for the several colours dish, based on a traditional 7 colours dish, but clearly a variation, as I could only count 6 colours. Not the best looking dish on the plate perhaps, but delicious again. Then the cheese plate, as I don't have a particularly sweet tooth, with a bucket of Hennessy cognac on the side of course. Very good again. I was impressed. The weather outside wasn't brilliant, so there were no views to start off with, but as I was very focused on that excellent meal, I didn't really notice. Indeed, we seem to have needed to make a sharp turn to avoid some bad stuff over the Mozambique Channel. But the clouds did eventually clear to give me my first ever views of Madagascar, a fascinating place I'm really keen to visit. And again, the view out of the window was the best entertainment on offer, for the latter part of this flight at least. Across the Madagascan coastline, and the next land we spotted was Réunion, an overseas department of France that's constitutionally as French as Paris or Calais. You could just about make it out underneath those clouds. Shortly after clearing Réunion, we began our descent into Mauritius, and the first glimpse of the country delivered everything you could possibly hope to see from an island in the Indian Ocean. This was the Le Morne Peninsula at the southwestern corner of the island. My excitement about the time I would spend there was building. As we descended and this excellent flight comes to an end, how much did this flight cost and how did I pay for it? I'd purchased my flight down to South Africa with Swiss and had plans to head back to Europe by redeeming some Air Canada Aeroplan points, a scheme you should know about if you don't already. Quite a few options had presented themselves, costing 80,000 points plus a relatively small cash element to cover the taxes. But Air Canada's scheme offers an excellent feature, which is to be able to add a stopover for only an extra 5,000 points. So when I was perusing the options, I spotted the option to fly across to Mauritius on South African, have a stopover there for a couple of nights, then to fly back to London on Air Mauritius for only 5,000 points more. So for 85,000 Aeroplan points, plus just £138 in taxes, I booked these 3 flights. I'd purchased those Aeroplan points during a 125% bonus promotion. This was a super special offer associated with the 40th birthday of their scheme, which hasn't been repeated since, so the 0.92p per point rate I achieved will be difficult to emulate, although 100% bonuses do come along from time to time. So spreading that total cost across the 3 flights based on miles flown, this trip from Cape Town to Mauritius via Johannesburg cost me £284, which is exceptional value for an experience that good, and it's an experience you guys could easily replicate. And off into the terminal for a very smooth immigration into country number 101. This was a great experience. That second plane was a bit clapped out, but the ground experience was excellent, with very good lounges in Cape Town and Johannesburg, even with that rather odd 11-minute wait outside the lounge in Cape Town. And the service from Johannesburg was nothing short of exceptional. Really, really good food, wine, gin and cognac, and the crew was superb too. We didn't make up any time in flight, so also landed 45 minutes late, which was annoying, but was by no means a disaster. So I would wholeheartedly recommend South African Airways if you have the opportunity to fly on them, and I really wish them well as they rebuild their operations after their bankruptcy. If they can continue to grow whilst retaining these standards, they'll be in a very good position to build a profitable airline for the long term. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give the video a like if you did, and if you know the answers to any of those questions, please let me know in the comments. Please subscribe if you're new, and if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there's a Patreon account, the link to which is below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.